I'm bigger and more.
Oh God, you're even handsomer on Skype. Oh my God. Oh my God. If you thought you looked good on Be Live, let me tell you, this is your medium. This is your medium. You're bigger and brighter. Oh my God, so much better. All right.
But can we hear him? So much more.
Hi, Dr. Lisle.
We still have good, decent sound?
Oh, good sound and good picture.
Good, okay. All right.
All right. So here we go. Okay. How do you handle the mind game of maintenance? I've lost before, but not successfully maintained. Meaning, I think weight loss is what they're talking about.
Right. Okay. The mind game of maintenance, the solution for all these things is going to be to become an expert observer of a very subtle but important process. And that subtle but important process is the self-esteem mechanism and how it's activated. So you're not designed by nature to be paying close attention to self-esteem. I'm setting myself up for the last third of my life to be frustrated because people are not going to understand what I'm talking about, but I may have to change my terminology. But I'm not planning to. So let me explain something. People, there's a reason why I use the words that I use. The people are very confused about the notion of self-confidence versus self-esteem. So people think that self-confidence means self-esteem. So, for example, if somebody wins an award or gets a raise or gets flirted with by somebody, they say, well, that was good for my self-esteem. The truth is it didn't have anything to do with your self-esteem. What it did was it raised your self-confidence. Okay? So your confidence is a feeling that's generated by your perception of how likely you are to be successful. Okay, so this is the specific purpose of confidence, and it's based upon confidence. You also can't just you can't just be confident. Like I was listening to an NBA coach say, he tells his team, when you shoot with confidence. It's like, really, like what kind of moronic advice is that? You don't have any choice as to how much confidence you have. Your confidence is derived from deep unconscious brain algorithms that have computed your probability of success. So we don't tell some low student in history class, just go in with confidence. Just take the test with confidence. Like that's a meaningless concept. Doesn't make any sense. The person's confidence is low because they have determined that they are very unlikely to get a good grade. That's why they have low confidence. Okay, so confidence is an extremely narrow process. It is not a wide process. Let me explain what I mean. So when Stephen Hawking was alive, he would have had a great deal of confidence with respect to doing complicated math problems in physics. But he would have had very low confidence in his ability to train a dog. Okay? So if you said, your life depends upon you training this dog in the next 2 hours in order to do something, Stephen Hawking would have had exceedingly low confidence in his ability to figure this out. Right? So your confidence depends upon your perception of your ability to succeed. That perception is highly subject to feedback from other people. Because if other people say, oh, I think you can get that job. I know 6 people that have less credentials than you, and they hired them all. They're expanding like crazy. Then that information gives you confidence that you're likely to succeed. You can also believe that when someone gives you good feedback, it makes you feel good about yourself. actually, it doesn't make you feel good about yourself. It just makes you feel good. The truth of the matter is that other people gave you good feedback and they found you acceptable and they want to trade with you. They want to hire you. They want to sleep with you. They want to be your friend. Some process, they are giving you good feedback. The self is very different. The self-esteem mechanism is an internal audience which is watching you. It's watching your efforts towards achieving your goals. And what it does is that when you do a really good job at your efforts, it gives you very positive feedback. That is what we call self-esteem. It's not the same thing as confidence at all. Okay? Now, diligent efforts where you work very hard are likely to eventually increase your confidence because you're probably going to improve at whatever it is that you do, but it might not. You might work very hard at something and fail, and it may become very clear that you are going to fail because you don't have the chops to do it. So let's suppose that you are, I don't know, let's suppose that you are you're an attorney, and you are trying your best to defend your client, and you believe that your client is innocent, and you believe that there are superficial facts to the case that are so inflammatory that they're very, very likely to be found guilty. And this is very disturbing to you. And you work day and night for 6 months to try to craft this, to try to figure out how to say this in front of a jury, and how to anticipate every trick that the other side is going to try to pull. And you do this, and then in the middle of the case, you're doing as very best you can, but you believe that you're losing. Okay? Your confidence is low. You actually don't think that you're going to win, and it's sickening. Okay? However, your self-esteem is high. Because your self-esteem is watching how hard you're working, and it knows how diligently you worked at this. You're giving it everything you possibly can. Okay? When you look yourself in the mirror at the end of this thing and your client is convicted and your client looks at you and basically sees what you've done and knows how hard you've worked and sees that you went absolutely 50 extra miles on this thing, they appreciate what you did even though they're extremely disappointed. Okay? You are extremely disappointed. You had very low confidence in the last 2 weeks of the trial because it was going badly and they had very much of emotional crap that was working really well. They had witnesses that were lying. Like, you did everything you could. But your self-esteem when you walk away from that is totally intact. Okay? That's an internal judge of your moral worth. Essentially, how good a job did you do? Now, notice how quiet that is compared to, oh, I got 3 job offers today. It's like that is so loud. The mechanism of esteem when it comes from the outside to your esteem meter is huge. And that's because actual real live positive feedback from actual real live people is something that will massively improve your confidence. Because those are the games you're attempting to play and win. And so if people are giving you really good feedback, it's huge for your confidence, and it also feels really good because you're going to get to engage in highly choice, excellent trading options that you're surprised and pleased that this is happening. So there's no good feeling in the world like people giving you positive feedback. But there's also no feeling in the world like self-esteem. Okay? Self-esteem is a different feeling than the esteem that comes from other people, and it's a different feeling of the confidence that comes when we believe that we're going to be victorious or successful. Self-esteem is an independent feeling, and it has to do specifically with what you feel like because of what it is that you've done and how hard you've worked. So the secret to maintenance okay, is to not confuse the fact that now that we have lost a bunch of weight and we are getting a bunch of positive esteem signals from other people, which was the entire point of doing it in the first place. Okay? And it's where all of the rubber hits the road in evolution, is what other people think of us. So now that we have reached that goal and other people are giving us positive feedback, it would make sense to say, what else matters? And that's indeed what happens to people, okay? So what happens to people is they'll lose. Usually they don't lose at all. Usually they lose 75% of what it is that they needed to lose. So they were 50 pounds overweight and now they're 12 and a half pounds overweight, or they're 60 pounds overweight and now they're 15 pounds overweight. And the truth is everybody's oohing and awing, and they are now a good facsimile of themselves. They now look 90% as good as they can look. And because of that, they're getting all kinds of positive feedback that is so loud compared to the feedback that they were getting 8 months before. So the contrast is spectacular. So the nervous system is soaring with newfound confidence that they will be able to trade in arenas. They'll be able to get jobs and promotions that they couldn't get. They'll be able to get romantic partners or keep them that they couldn't have gotten before. They'll even be able to have friends that are cooler and more chic than people that they get out before. Across all domains of life, things have undergone a significant change for the positive. The confidence system is soaring, and it feels really good to get the positive feedback from other people. Okay? So it's no surprise that that person now says, well, what is one Snickers bar going to hurt? Okay? What difference is it going to make? Okay, the answer is none. Not to the feedback from other people. That's not going to change. And so not to your confidence. Your confidence hasn't changed. The truth is that you're just as confident that as long as other people are giving you positive feedback, your confidence doesn't change. You swallow a Snickers bar, you start swallowing a Snickers bar every day this week, nothing is going to change except one thing, and that's your self-esteem. Okay? Your self-esteem will change, and your self-esteem will change with the first Snickers bar that you eat. The internal audience will say, what's this? This is mediocrity. Okay? This is kind of disgusting. That's what it's going to say. And the pleasure trap will say, no, this is really good. Okay? And so this is a good idea. Okay, that's fine. That's what the pleasure trap is going to say. But your internal audience is smarter than the pleasure trap, and it knows that this is self-indulgent behavior that's associated with failure. But the truth of the matter is it's so quiet. It's so quiet. It's a quiet little internal system that is easily drowned out by feedback that comes from other people. So you could swallow 3 Snickers bars at lunch, go back to the office, and somebody that hasn't seen you in 3 months that's visiting from another office says, wow, you are looking great. And you know what? You're like, yeah. Okay? And you feel pretty good and feel pretty confident. You sit up straight, and it's a good feeling, right? And it's drowned out the disgusting signal that your self-esteem mechanism sent you, an hour earlier. It's drowned it out, okay? The key to maintenance success is to understand that what we're not, even though it seems like we're here for the success with other people, what they think of us. But the truth is that we have to be here for the self-esteem mechanism. The self-esteem mechanism needs to become your compass. That needs to become what you're watching. Okay? So we all know what it feels like to give back money to the clerk that gave us $5 too much, or $2 too much. It's like many times I've taken the money. I don't know how many times this happened in my life, but I don't know, 50 times, maybe 30. So a bunch of those times I just took the money, okay? And I acted like I didn't notice. And when I walked away, it wasn't worth the $2, okay? And a little greed factor just said, what the heck, okay? Hasn't happened lately. $5 wouldn't mean anything to me now, but there was a time when $5 meant something. And when some clerk made a $5 mistake or $2 mistake, I might have just, and I did, I could justify it, like, I don't want to embarrass the person. It was bogus. Many times I've called them on it. Hey, it's a mistake. Okay, it happens less often now because it's all electronic. That's why it hasn't happened in years. But in the old days, before we had electronic changes, it happened fairly often to me. And and it feels better when you say, oh, actually, it's a mistake. It's $2 too much. And you give it back and you walk away and you know your internal audience says, I did the right thing. Okay? So that's the key to maintenance, is to become sensitive to the messages that are coming from the internal audience and to understand that, you don't have to have a good self-esteem mechanism for anything. It's not required by life. Okay? It's required to optimize your happiness, however. You can't be as happy as the organism is capable of being if the self-esteem mechanism is not telling you that it's proud of you. We can't control. The reason why I'm fanatical about this is that we cannot actually control our self-confidence, because our self-confidence has to do with our likelihood of positive feedback from other people or success in competitive domains. And we may not be able to rise or be as good at what it is that we would like to be. Okay? So a person that might lose 100 pounds, they might have they may not be as competitive and sexy and good looking as that they were hoping that they would be. And so we can't be pinning everything on what we're going to get out of something. We can do the best that we can, but we can't pin our hopes on it. Instead, what we want to do, the one source of life that we have great control over is the self-esteem process. That process we can control, and that part of life's experience we can control. And so I want people to become aware of it, because I believe that it is subtle, but it is unbelievably important. The reason why it's so important is it ultimately winds up being the mechanism that will result in your long-term success or failure. Okay? So it integrates with what it is that you want most, which is to have success, but it is the stepping stone or fundamental that we need to constantly pay attention to that is the driving force of all long-term success. Okay? That's how we look at it.
That was terrific. So the question you answered earlier about the indulgent meal, then framing it this way, maybe it wouldn't affect their weight and maybe it would even get them back in the pleasure trap, but wouldn't ostensibly their internal audience be disgusted?
Would. And that's why it's interesting for the person to watch that.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's like, it's very interesting. Like if we make that more extreme, like my person with the alcohol struggle right now. So next month is the 1-year anniversary date. And this is a very sophisticated, extremely smart person. And so this person is watching this internal battle and reporting to me, and very openly. And so it's a spectacular thing for us to both observe. It's like, look at this thing. Look at the pleasure trap. Okay, watch it work, as it always is trying to draw you in. And then watch the legitimate self-esteem mechanism saying, boy, have you done an exceedingly good job. It would be reasonable for you to celebrate this. Okay? And then just watch what it's doing. It's morphing it into a bottle of wine. It's like, careful. Careful. Make your celebration something else than to go the opposite direction of what's driving your success.
Wow, I've never heard you say it in exactly those words, but it would make a lot of sense that one of the reasons that people beat themselves up so much when they relapse or even have a slip isn't because they're so afraid of gaining the weight back, but because they've disgusted their internal audience. And I would say the opposite might be true. I just got back from 3 days at True North where I ate every meal with Dr. Goldhammer, and I feel proud eating this way. I mean, I do. It makes me feel proud.
Yes. That's exactly right. And that's I feel proud, actually, surprisingly, whenever I'm eating any whole natural food. Now, I watch it because it's real subtle, okay? It's real subtle, but I am aware that I have the opportunity to not eat it. Okay? I could eat something else that would be dirtier and slimier or self-destructive or anything else. And I don't always make the optimal choice, but when I do, I'm aware that I'm making it, and the pride that goes on from doing it is like it's very quiet. Okay? It's like really soft music, but it's interesting music, and it's important music, and it's good. It's good for us to tune into it.
It's like when you have an indulgent, it's like not giving that $5 back.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
I love. You guys ever heard him say it this way? I love this.
I love that.
Everybody's loving it. Thank you. This is like mind blowing. So I love this question. It's I think I know what you might say, but she says, I fall under the nice girls finish fat category. I'm a sensitive, easygoing person who gets her feelings hurt very easily. How do I change my mindset to be a skinny bitch? How do I get a tougher skin mentally?
Well, that's not going to happen because your personality is your personality.
I knew you were going to
right?
say that.
So you can be thin and be a nice person. It does help to be a bitch to get there.
He's so cute when he laughs.
Yeah, but the problems is that a sweet person needs to master some very simple social tools that can drag you into trouble that are always as a result of interpersonal pressure. So the solution is that once again, when if we have failed and stumbled behind some social pressure, then we need to kind of do a post-mortem on that, and the next time try something else. So be ready. This is very much to me like being instructed in learning how to hit a major league curveball. Alan had a client once. I don't know what his name was. Of course, Mickey or something like that. And this guy was a good baseball player and got drafted in the Minnesota Twins organization. And they brought him up to the major leagues. And his very first time at bat, he's at bat, and the pitcher throws the pitch, and he never saw it. He did not see the pitch. And his first thought was how expensive it was going to be out of the little bit of money he had to get back to Memphis. Yeah, you realize, I can't do it. Holy smokes. That's what a major league arm does. Okay? Now, it turned out he spent 15 years in the major leagues. But he had a lot to learn. Okay? So he had to learn how on earth to look at a major league curveball. Like, how on earth you're going to deal with this. And so that's the same thing for a bitch, not a problem. Okay? Do you want some of this? No. Why not? Because I don't want to be fat and sick. Actually, I don't want to be fat and sick like you. Not a problem. They won't ask twice. But for a sweet person, you're going to need to learn how to hit a major league curveball. And so that's what the little responses that I've formulated are for. Someone asks you, would you like some of this? You say, no, thank you. Maybe later. Okay? They come at you again. We sure you don't want some? Yeah, maybe later. Just blow them off twice. Okay, so these are very simple maneuvers. We need to, find our ways to slip around these problems if you're a nice person. If you're in a more intimate relationship and there's more strife in this because the other person is feeling like they're looking like they're a self-indulgent slob if they don't do it, and then you need to go along with them, etc., then we have to hide behind things like experiments. Okay? So then we're going to have to say, you know what? I'm just trying this. I'm going to really just try this for 6 weeks to see what happens. What the heck? I'm just going to do it just why I've never really done it right. So I'm going to just really do this, and you do whatever you're going to do, but I'm going to do this, and that's what I'm going to do. I really want to see what happens, just for my own pure curiosity. Man, you probably won't do it. Oh, no, not. Okay, it's not going to do me any good. You're probably not going to lose any weight. Yeah, you're probably right. You're probably going to get sick, and, you know, I don't know. You know, what else they say? Waste away, or I don't know. I have no idea. But you just agree with everybody. And we ignore this process as much as we can. We hide behind experiments. We be nice as anything and just get them to leave you alone. Okay? And then after the 6 weeks are up, you're like, yeah, that was pretty good. I don't think I could do it again, but I kind of like to try it again because it just seems like it's working. See? So we just set this up until everybody gets used to it. And they get used to the idea that we're not looking down our nose at them. And then we just have a perpetual process that this is what we do. So these are the kinds of ways that nice people can maneuver around these problems. It is a bunch of extra stress for nice people as opposed to people that are more confrontive. And that's just how it is. It's just an additional burden. You know, not everybody is meant to be a race car driver. You know, all of us could get better at race car driving, and we could probably get around a track pretty safely at 120 miles an hour and be fine. But not everybody's built to go 200 miles an hour 5 feet away from somebody else going 200 miles an hour. Okay, so this is not easy social maneuvering, but we don't have to be that good. We just have to be a little better than you are.
Nice.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to remember that because I don't want to be fat and sick like you. That's a good one. I'm going to add that to my repertoire. Okay. Why do I wake up every night after 3 hours of sleep, no matter what time I go to sleep?
Yes. What's happening is that you sleep in what's known as sleep cycles. So your sleep cycles are about an hour and a half, and so you're sleeping, you go down and deeper, and then you come back up. It's like a sine wave. It just goes like that. And so very often people wake up after the second sleep cycle, or very oftentimes it might be the third or even the fourth. But I would say, in my experience, most people, if they wake up during the nighttime, they're usually waking up at the top of the second or the third sleep cycle. There's a reason for this, and that is that the reason why you go to sleep at all is because your mind is running a cost-benefit analysis on whether or not it should be asleep or whether or not it should be awake. So as sleepy as you are, if suddenly somebody bangs on your door and it says, open up, we're coming in, you're going to be wide awake. Okay, so your mind is able to adjust whether it should be asleep or awake depending upon the demands of the situation. Now, so what can happen is that once you go to sleep, the brain does some major house cleaning every REM cycle or every sleep cycle. So the first hour and a half, you go down in and you're cleaning house in a big way. And then when you come to the top of your sleep cycle, you are very close to being awake. Okay, you're not awake, but you're very close. All it would take is somebody to tap you on the shoulder and you'd wake right up. Had you been in the depth of your sleep cycle half an hour earlier and I tapped you on the shoulder, you would not wake up. You're like dead to the world. Okay, so it depends upon where you are. Some people think it's a personality characteristic, like, oh, Joe, he sleeps really deep. No, that's just because you happened to tap on the shoulder one night when he was down in deep sleep. Other people say, oh, I'm a really light sleeper. No, you're not. You're not a light sleeper. You will wake up. You will wake up. We will not be able to wake you up if you're down in stage 4 sleep, an hour into a sleep cycle. We won't be able to wake you up. I mean, we will have to really raise hell on the system to get you up. So what's going to happen is when people wake up, they're always waking up at the top of the sleep cycle. Okay, that's the only time that they're going to wake up in the nighttime. And what the brain is doing is it's running a cost-benefit analysis. Should we be awake or should we be asleep? So it's going to turn out that if you've got enough little agitation in the system about anything, the son of a bitch at work, what I'm saying, the IRS and that pesky little thing that they want you to file, whatever it is that could be bothering you under the whole world, the brain may say, you know what, it's worth us getting up and thinking about that a little bit. So it might go, think, okay? Or it may be that you got to pee, so you got a little bladder that's just agitated enough, and when you're in deep sleep, it's not going to tell you, it couldn't care less. But when you get to the top of a sleep cycle, it goes, ding, okay, we're a little bit agitated about that, let's get up, okay? So that's why you're waking up at 3 o'clock no matter when you go to sleep, is because the reason you go to sleep is because you're tired enough that the brain says, you know what, it's not worth staying awake anymore. It's time to go to sleep, so you're pretty tired. Then when you go to sleep, you go to sleep for a couple, 3 hours, you clean up the brain quite a bit. Now the brain says, let's get up and let's do some thinking here because we've cleaned up enough, and now maybe we need to do a little bit of analysis on some of the loose ends, okay? People can have reasons why they might do this. You can actually condition the mind to wake up, after a couple of REM cycles. If it's happened over and over again for some reason, so maybe you went through a period of time where you had a lot on your mind and you're under a lot of pressure, so you kept waking up after 2 REM cycles. And so then once you've done that for a long period of time, the system itself expects that we're going to do it, and it will do it. Okay, so you essentially classically condition the system to waking up after 2 REM cycles. Usually that will fade away after the real stressor is gone. So I've seen many people that when they slept in one environment, they were waking up after 2 REM cycles. But when they went and slept in another environment that was one notch safer, then they slept all the way through the night. So you may not, I don't know who this specific person is or this specific issue, but people sometimes have little hangnails of issues that are causing them just enough anxiety to get them to pop awake after a couple of REM cycles. So that's why that's happening.
Thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Lisle, why would one sabotage their diet when they know they can be successful? I just keep on beating myself up over this.
Okay. There's going to be 2 primary reasons why you would sabotage. The first reason is the pleasure trap, and that is that you're designed by nature to seek the most stimulating, most rewarding chemicals that you can get. So you have to override that consistently it's worse than just that. The problem is that as you understand, you habituate to the high stimulating foods, and so once you've habituated to the high stimulating foods, taste buds habituate, then eating healthy food is actually subnormal when it comes to its reward characteristics. So the food is actually less tasty than it is supposed to be because the taste buds have been adulterated. So you're essentially struggling trying to get yourself to eat healthy food when your mind is telling you this is a mistake. You're actually eating foods that are of subpar value and they do not have enough calorie density to be worth eating. You should continue to seek out foods of higher calorie density. So that's the primary reason why people will continue to sabotage their efforts at doing this, is because they have to go against the call of the instinct that is telling them that they're doing the wrong thing. Okay? That's the number one reason. Now, the second reason is that they can feel the pressure of expectation that they should be able to do this. Okay? Once they learn that this is a solution, and they learn that this would result in them, likely being successful, and that in principle that there's nothing about them that should stop them from being successful, then once that these facts have been identified, the individual then, of course, would manufacture a reasonably high expectation they would actually have quite a bit of reason to believe that they should be successful. And so it's going to turn out, even if nobody else ever says anything to them, their own internal audience will infer that if other people knew what you knew about what you should be doing, then they would expect you to be able to do this. And you have very high motivation to be doing this because we've got 50 pounds to lose. And so therefore you should do it, you can do it, and now the internal audience firmly expects you to do it. Now the problem is that inside of you is not just an internal audience. There's also a different entity that we're going to call the self, and that is you. The internal audience is not you. Even though it's part of your brain tissue, it's effectively not who you are. It's effectively independent people living inside you, watching you, and giving you feedback, okay? So it's the engine of the self-esteem mechanism. We call it self-esteem because it's literally coming from inside your head. But it's not coming from you. It's coming from this fictitious audience that lives inside your head that's watching you. Now, who is it that they're watching? They're watching a structure that we're going to call the self. That's you, okay? And what your self does is that your self sets goals for you. So the self says, we should be able to get a B in this math class. Why? Because people about as smart as us are getting B's in the math class, so we should be able to get a B in the math class. And then the self will set that goal if that math class is important. The self will set a goal that would say, you know, I don't know, if you're pretty athletic, it'd say we should be able to run a half marathon, okay, etc. So the self will set goals that it thinks are appropriate for you. So the self will set this goal, and the self will say, we should be able to do it. And the internal audience will say, yes, you should be able to do it. But the self will not have full confidence that it can do it because it hasn't maybe done it before. Or when it's tried before, it has given up the ghost after 3 weeks. Or it's maybe given up the ghost after 2 months. So the self has actually repeatedly made efforts, and it had a great deal of failure. Now it also looks at the situation and says there's no reason we shouldn't be able to succeed. So the self is itself literally in dissonance and in confusion over the situation, okay? It believes that it should be able to do this, but it's also not certain that it can. The internal audience has no such confusion. The internal audience is aware that it is completely reasonable that it would expect you to be able to do this. All you have to do is do it, okay? So the internal audience says, you should be able to do this. The self says, yeah, I hear that you think that I should be able to do this, but I'm not so sure that I can do it. And so what the self will do is it will hide from the judgment of the internal audience. And the way that it will do this is that it will demonstrate to the internal audience that it is not trying. Okay? It will kick over the table. This is what I call the ego trap. This has a characteristic pattern of feelings that are involved. Okay? The characteristic patterns of feelings that are involved in the ego trap is bitterness, okay, self-loathing, even suicidal ideation. Okay? Someone that's just in the pleasure trap, it's like, gosh, I'd really like to do this, but oh God, pizza's just so good. And you know, that really healthy food just tastes like crap. I'm not hearing in that self-loathing. Okay? That's just a person in the pleasure trap. But when a person feels like that they sabotage themselves and it's mysterious and they're bitter and they're frustrated and they're depressed about it and they're embarrassed and even humiliated about it and they even feel like killing themselves. In other words, these are very interesting track marks in the snow that tell us what kind of animal this is. This is not the pleasure trap. This is the ego trap. Okay? The ego trap comes about because the person has unwittingly set the bar too high. Okay? So we have to lower the bar about what we're expecting and to a level where the self can believe that it may well be able to achieve this even though it's not going to be easy. Okay? So that's why I have the thing that I call starch targets. So the starch target sheet is basically for people that are in the ego trap, that have struggled with this problem. And we are going to now set the bar down at a reasonable level for them to be reasonably looking at achieving. That bar, I just arbitrarily made that thing up. I just eyeballed it on my clinical experience. Not a single shred of research has gone into any of it. What I did is I made up 6 little check boxes for every day. They're starch, fruit, salad, and exercise. So there are six boxes. And so that means there's 42 boxes a week. And I set the goal at 80%. So I want them to be able to check 80% of the boxes. That way, every day you're still in it. Okay, if you haven't eaten an apple today and it's 10 o'clock at night, you go eat an apple and you get to hit a box. Okay, if you have an exercise today and it's 10:15 and you just ate the apple, then exercise for 15 minutes. Put on some dance music. Then you get back to the other box. Okay, you're not out of it. I don't care how much indulgence people do. I care about what they do right. And what they do right, the starches, I should have put on my sheet that they need to be wet, because bread and crackers and cookies are not starches. They have to be wet. They have to be full of water, i.e. naturally occurring starches or close. Pasta, high quality pasta would pass muster for me as a wet starch because it's full of water. So those are the targets that I want people to aim for 80% a week. And that is something that the self, when it looks at it, often will say, you know what, I think I can do that. Okay? That's what I want them to feel. I want them to then begin the process, and when they aren't perfect on a given day, but they check some of the boxes, the self-esteem mechanism, or the internal audience, now starts to take on a different expectation. The expectation is not perfection. The expectation is the starch target sheet. So we morph the expectations into something that does not seem trivial, but it does not seem impossible. I had somebody tell me today that some idiot somewhere apparently wrote a book called Brain Over Binge, at which point the whole point of the book was to not have any restrictions. It's like, really, not have any restrictions at all. Okay? So that means if I want to eat chocolate bars and snort cocaine, and I want to like eat pizza with both hands, like these are things that are fun. This is Brain Over Binge. Okay? Now, this is ludicrous. Yeah. But I understand what they're trying to do here. They are trying to get the bar so low that the person gets out of the ego trap. Okay? That's actually what they're trying to do. They recognize that so many people that do binge eating do a tremendous amount of restricting, white-knuckling their way through their days, and then they just lose control. So they have identified that that's a problem. And they vaguely, only vaguely, they understand that we've got to take pressure off people. But the mistake they're making is that they're taking all the pressure off the people, and they're going to fail. Okay? They're going to fail because they're going to walk the people right into the pleasure trap. And they would say, oh no, but if you do any restricting, then that's going to cause the people. It's like, really? That's kind of what we call rehab. So we don't send a guy to Betty Ford out of Hollywood that's got a crack problem and say, well, don't restrict yourself. Here at Betty Ford, we've got crack, we've got regular cocaine, we've got methamphetamine, we've got speedball. Don't restrict. Okay? It's not what we do. Okay? So we absolutely restrict, and we set boundaries. You know what I'm saying? That's what we do. So with respect to this, is we need to do the same thing. We set good boundaries. I'm trying to get people to do this well enough that they feel better and that they start to have some success. That's how good we've got to do it. Okay, we've got to do it so that the person feels good and they start to have some success. So we get 3 things working in our direction. They start after a month, they've lost 3 pounds. And they can tell that they have because they measure 3 times at the beginning of the month in a row, then they measure 3 times at the end of the month in a row, and by God, they're down 3 pounds. Now, they're not sure because it could be random fluctuation, hormones, glycogen storage, who knows, but there's a good chance it's not. because we had 3 consecutive measurements on 3 different sets of days. And they have been doing a plant better than they've been doing it before, and they understand they've lowered the calorie density of their diet, and they've got a check sheet there that they did a pretty darn good job. And now what happens? What happens is, once they can see that they've had some success, so the program is legitimate, and that they're executing the program enough to get results, and they've got a objective-looking system that is basically keeping track and that they have to answer to honestly, then their internal audience can say, it is very reasonable for this to be the standard that we're attempting to adhere to, because we can see that we are having success with it. Okay? So the internal audience then relaxes its vice grip on judging the individual for not being perfect. Okay? So this is the problem, of course, on the other side of this, is that any indulgence that they do activates the possible pleasure trap. So the ego trap and the pleasure trap are actually opponent motivational processes. They are literally 180 degrees working against each other. The people that wrote Brain Over Binge basically said, all we care about is getting you out of the ego trap. We're just going to have the bar at 0, and we want all of your machinations and frantic behavior around this to end. We want you to just do whatever the hell you want. Okay? Now, I wouldn't be shocked if they have a little bit of success. They might. Okay? Just getting a few people out of a crushing ego trap may be enough for some people to then make some decent choices more often and drift in a good direction and get out of binging. Okay? A better move is to essentially look at the pleasure trap and the ego trap as an unfortunate pair of snakes that are wrapped around each other, just like the emblem for medicine. Pair of snakes, okay? And so we actually have to be careful, because sometimes if we go too hard on one of the snakes, the other one will surprise us. So sometimes if we go too much for perfection and set the bar too high, then the ego trap will do what this person is asking. Why do I sabotage myself? Whenever I hear anybody use that terminology, I think ego trap. Okay? When I hear people say, I don't know, why is just so hard? Then that sounds more like the pleasure trap. A little bit different. The person that feels like they're self-sabotaging probably is. Their self is probably feeling the crushing expectations of the internal audience, and they are giving the internal audience the finger while they go indulge. Okay? Watch me. I'm not even trying. Okay? That's what the self will do in the face of expectations too high. So what we want to do, we have to understand, you might say, God, this is so weird, such a bizarre, twisted mess. Why does it have to be this way? And the answer is, this is not natural. We are actually watching an unnatural mental conflict. The ego trap is a natural problem when something is difficult and we are feeling like the expectations are too high and we might kick over the table. That is a natural, self-destructive, motivational process. The pleasure trap is not. The pleasure trap is totally unnatural. So when we add a totally unnatural problem, and we essentially, it winds up that is inherently interrelated with a natural problem, we wind up with an extraordinary mess. Okay? And that's what the problem is that each and every one of us is facing. We are facing the double-headed snake of the ego trap and the pleasure trap. And so this is the dance that we do clinically, is to not basically say, well, the solution is to be perfect. That's Alan's solution, okay, and that's partially AJ's solution. But the issue is, both of them are understanding now more. Unfortunately, that can walk some people into the ego trap. So they are accurate that it is the simplest solution to get out of the pleasure trap, which is the heart and soul of the problem in the first place. But the problem is the pleasure trap is in fact very difficult. Okay? And it's far more difficult for some people than others. It was not particularly difficult for AJ, and it was not particularly difficult for Alan, because those are two very unusual personalities. Okay? But for a lot of people, the pleasure trap is 5 times harder than it was for either one of these people. And the problem is even though it is accurate to say that total perfect abstinence is ultimately the shortest distance between those 2 points, and it winds up being the easiest thing to maintain because you have the highest possible sensitivity to the palate, this is accurate, okay? But the problem is that the bar is very high, okay? And the problem is we cannot have the person's internal audience absorb a goal that high, okay? We don't even want that, because when they do, it is unlikely that they will be so successful that they will not then find some of this countervailing self-destructive pressure that we call the ego trap, okay? So this is why this is a very unfortunate yin and yang, that these things have to be balanced, okay? My eyeball estimate for someone who's struggling, for someone who I can tell has been in the ego trap, is to get to 80% of starch targets, okay? Beautiful. We go there first. That is the first stop on the journey. And it's a very good stop, and it's enough to get us rolling in the right direction. After that, if it turns out we aren't quite where we want to be, then we can move on from there, okay? So hopefully that makes sense and answers that question.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much, Dr. Lisle. Okay, well, I don't want to take up more of your time, so maybe you'll come just the regular monthly interview like we do. There's a few good questions about procrastination and plateaus and self-esteem that we can maybe catch on our regular monthly thing, if that's all right with you.
Perfect. My pleasure.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lisle.
All right, let's go.
Bye, Doc. Take care. Bye.